Boom shakalaka. What's going on, guys? Randall here from Crypto Love, and I am joined today by Jimmy Zhong, the CEO of IOST. What's up, Jimmy?
What's up, man? How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Doing well. Actually, just got back from Consensus. Super crowded over there. Last time I've seen this many people was Trump doing a live show at Hilton. It was so crowded in Midtown. Yeah,
Oh, wow. So it sounds like it's pretty awesome there at Consensus. A lot of people out there.
yeah. There's a lot of people. It's more like a block and crowd thing right now.
Wow. Anything that's really stuck out that's caught you already at Consensus?
Yeah. I mean, there were a lot of people that are giving talks and things like that. I think this year they raised the ticket price to like $3,000, something like that, and yet like almost like 10,000 people were attending. It's crazy. It's crazy. But yeah, we've seen a lot of exciting projects there. The project's going on for 3 days, so we're actually looking forward to it. I'll be there tomorrow. So
Fantastic. So, to begin with, let's just let everyone know, tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
yeah, so I've been doing startups since honestly 16. I was born in Beijing. Went to U.S. for college. Emory University, Atlanta, Georgia. I was here for I think 7 years by now. Sold my first company when I was in college for $40 million. Then we started the second one, then the third one, then every one of them was doing great. We either got acquisition or we're making profit. And we started by doing this blockchain thing back in 2017. That's when the whole hype was going on, but we didn't do this because of hype. I've been buying Bitcoin since 2013 and Ethereum since 2015. I hold all my Ethereum, but sorry, I hold all my Bitcoins, but sold all my Ethereum at $16. So that's the situation. Yeah, I mean, so first time I heard of crypto or Bitcoin specifically was in 2013. My college professor, who his name is Chingas, he was mining Bitcoin back then. I was CS major. He was teaching me distributed system, and he's basically be like, hey, there's something you should check it out. And nobody really talks about the concept of blockchain back then. You know what I'm saying? Like people only get into Bitcoin because it's something cool that for the first time in the human history that you don't have to carry the heavy shells or gold or all this stuff, and you can yet own your own assets, right? Like you don't have to worry about government or parents or anyone just take it away from you. And that was cool enough for me. I mean, for me personally back then. So even we didn't understand the concept of blockchain, we've acquired this amount of Bitcoin over the past 4 years. So pretty happy with that investment. And then Ethereum. So in 2014, actually, there was this kid actually 1 year younger than me. His name is Vitalik. Everyone knows him. He mentioned that let's not only build cryptocurrency, or let's not only overturn the banking industry. Blockchain is very useful. It can be used for a lot of other industries, right? So let's build something. Let's build an operating system where other guys can build their decentralized applications on top of it. With say like a few hundred lines of code. It's not too complicated. Then boom, there's Ethereum. And back in 2014, 2015, actually till 2017, nobody really cares that much about Ethereum or even Bitcoin. You know what I'm saying? Like people were, they know that like back like when I was trading Ethereum in 2015, when I searched Ethereum on Google, it literally mentioned like, did you mean Ether? It shows me some other stuff. Like you can't even find their website. Like nobody knows what they are. People were still debating about how or why they can replace Litecoin or not, which from today's point of view is ridiculous because they're two separate things. But back then people don't understand what's going on, and we've acquired a lot of Ethereum because we think that this is brilliant. Like we can use blockchain for more stuff right now. And until like the beginning of 2017 or the latter of 2016, we started to realize that not only that they're having a lot of governance issues because even their technology is still at early stage, but like the market cap is already getting quite huge. So it's like you're owning a company like Google, yet the technology is more like a C-Rock company. So that's kind of getting to a problem where, if you can see right now, like EOS as one of their biggest competitors has more Ethereum, way more Ethereum than the Ethereum Foundation has, right? So this is getting kind of out of balance. And not only that, like back in 2016, the reason we sold our Ethereum, not only because of the DAO attack, but also because that we realized to actually build the decentralized applications on top of anything. Like Bitcoin doesn't need to scale because Bitcoin is cryptocurrency. Bitcoin is like a store of value, right? Like we don't really have to, transfer physical gold 50,000 times a day. Like people don't do that shit in like real world. So Bitcoin doesn't need to scale, but Ethereum does. Like when you're providing an operating system, like an ecosystem, right? You want people to be able to use it. If a simple game like Crypto Kingdom, I'm really sick of using that example because people use it all the time. But this is a fact though. If a simple game like that can block the whole network, or some ICO like SNT, they can just block the whole network by raising fund. This is not usable, right? So that's when we start to think about how to make this network better, how to actually help it scale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely a good intro. So, I mean, it would be safe to say then, since you've done well in business before, you're not particularly in this for the money like a lot of other projects out there.
Yeah, I don't want to brag about it, but all of our co-founders will be investing in Bitcoin since from 2013 2016. So I've sold my companies before. I've got Bitcoins, and frankly speaking, we're still young. We care about reputation. We care about doing something that's meaningful. That's why we don't want to launch some shit project or copy other people's code within a few days and launch some shit stuff and just put on a shit show. Like currently, everyone knows that there's too much bullshit in the industry. Frankly speaking, I think there are two types of bullshit. One of them, they're just basically scammers. They don't have anything. They just raise money and do whatever they want and have some shit show. And then they do the super node thing again, just like EOS, copy some codes from BTS, and then they launch the product, make money. We don't like that, obviously. The second shit show is more like there are a lot of people right now, especially in the US, they're raising a lot of money. They're raising a lot of money, like tons of money. Yet the project they're developing cannot be possibly launched within the next few years. Like they threw the fancy words around. Like here's the sad thing, like even the VCs these days, most people do not understand the technology. Like they still get fooled by all these fancy terms or words and stuff like that. So this is pretty sad. For us, we want to do something straightforward. We want to do something meaningful, and we want to have our product ready to be launched by end of this year, beginning of next year. Like we don't want to target something 20 years from now on. If I'm telling you, hey man, like we're doing something really cool here, we're gonna have a product launch in I don't know, like 52 years. So that's pretty messed up. Like you know what I'm saying. So we particularly are not interested in money here. Like we really want to do something meaningful, and we do think that in this industry right now, there's a lot of potential here, and we do want to make something that can actually be launched simple enough, straightforward enough, and can be actually make this whole industry better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one thing that I really like about you guys in IOST is that you're not one of these hype projects that's got something new in the news every single day while really there's nothing happening until years in the future. You guys are busy working on the project, developing it, and then the people who find out about it early will be the people who probably do well later on. But since you talked about yourself, tell us a little bit about IOST.
Yeah, so let's get into the technology for a little bit. Let's try not to make it too complicated so people understand what's going on here. So let's talk about the problem first, right? Everyone knows, or almost everyone right now knows that there's a scalability problem with Ethereum, right? But how come this is so hard for, say, a genius like Vitalik or a genius team around Vitalik to figure out how to scale Ethereum? Is it really that hard? I've been asking so many times by journalists like, hey, why don't they have more nodes? Why don't they just change the code? So let's actually understand why this problem is so complicated right now first. So in general, there are three things that are very important for blockchain, and they're conflicting with each other. One of them is called data consistency. Data consistency, you don't have to understand what that means, but understand this is really important for smart contract. To actually support complicated smart contract, you need to have data consistency, okay? So you have that in mind. Then we have scalability here, which is something Ethereum hasn't resolved yet. What does that mean? It means, we don't want to confirm a transaction for, 30, 40 minutes or an hour like Bitcoin, right? We want to confirm in a second. Right? We want a low latency network. And we want it to be able to handle more transactions per second. The whole Ethereum network handles 20 transactions per second. That's one of the biggest reasons why all this decentralized exchange couldn't all be decentralized exchange already. Because, if you only get to handle 20 transactions per second versus, Binance that are handling thousands of them, it's really off the balance. It's not even usable. So that's scalability. The last part, which is actually the most important part, we call them decentralization, right? Like without decentralization, there's no point of talking about blockchain. Like obviously, Google has resolved the scalability issue by using one single server SAS 15, 20 years ago, right? So they know how to solve this in distributed system. That's not really a problem. The only reason that blockchain suffers from scalability right now is because that we have to be decentralized and we have to maintain the data consistency. So back to Ethereum. What Ethereum does here is actually very brilliant. It does something very similar to Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin is a fully decentralized platform with data consistency. Sorry, Ethereum. So Ethereum supports smart contract, right? So like complicated smart contract. It has data consistency. All the nodes in theory has the same information at the same time. It's not like you think A equals to 5, I think A equals to 7. At the same draft time, we both think A equals to 7, right? So we can do a smart contract. We can talk to each other. It's very smooth. We have the same information. And in the meantime, it's fully decentralized. Why? We define decentralization here means one thing, that everyone with a certain barrier, you have to have a computer, right? You can't really be like homeless. Everyone with a reasonable barrier can join the network as a validator, right? It's not like for example, you can't really, no matter how rich you are or how powerful you are, you can't really just host Google's website for Google, right? You can't really join, like, hey, you can't be like calling Larry Page, hey, I'm joining your network tomorrow, I'll be hosting your search engine. It doesn't work like that, right? But for Ethereum, it does, right? If you get to the computer, you get a decent enough GPU or whatever, you actually get to mine Ethereum. You can join the network. You don't have to be too ridiculously rich, right? If you don't have that much money, maybe you mine slower. Some people are richer, they mine faster. That's it. It's a very balanced system. And so those three things, they're basically conflicting with each other right now. So let's look at the current solutions. What are the popular solutions right now to solve the scalability issue? One of them is the easiest way, which is the most popular project right now. It's called EOS. I'm sure like basically all of you guys have heard of that. What EOS does, let's talk about what they're good at, and let's talk about what's the downside for EOS, right? Everything comes with pros and cons. So the pro here is very straightforward. Let me give you an example here why EOS is faster. Here's a very common thing that people need to understand. It's not like the more nodes you have, the faster you are. It's actually on the contrary of that. The more nodes you have, the more people you need to talk to, right? For the basically to reach consensus. It's like imagine you have 100 kids in your classroom. It's like elementary school, right? Now the professor issued you say like a math question, a calculus question, all right? Then you'll be like, hey, let's do this. But you're gonna do this one by one. Like Tommy did this, then Jack is gonna do it. And some people are sleeping, some people are playing with their cell phone, they're all gonna do it. Then you guys reach consensus, be like, hey, let's pick A for this question. Bingo, move on. How slow it's gonna be, right? EOS has a very brilliant solution here by sacrificing decentralization. They did something like this. They kicked all this 100 elementary school kids out. Hey, you guys are out. You guys are stupid. You guys are not smart enough, and you guys are out. We're gonna bring in only three PhDs into the classroom, right? So they can reach the consensus, I don't know, like 100 times faster, right? Because first of all, they can do the question faster. Second of all, there are only 3 of them. They talk to each other. They'd be like, A, go, right? So that's a lot faster. But what does that mean? EOS in real world, it brings 21 super nodes compared to Ethereum, which has more than 30,000 nodes, right? 21 versus 30,000. Here we introduce a lot of problems. Number one, the 21 super nodes are elected by human. You understand what that means, right? It's not by code. It's not by anything. It's like they literally have judge. They rate you. Hey man, you look like a 7.5 and Jimmy looked like a 3.6. I'm sorry, Jimmy. It's more like that, right? So like people who are running the super nodes election, they actually get rated by the community or by their foundation. Then they figure out who are the super nodes. And for the fact, I already know that there are allies being made, right? So although it looks like there are 21 organizations that are managing the network, in fact, it's probably more like 7 or 8 or even less. In the future, maybe 2 or 3. That's really, really bad, right? And you don't want that. Let alone the bribe or all the stuff that going underneath the scene, we don't really know. So that's why Vitalik, I think, on one day tweeted like 60 tweets about how or why he thinks this is ridiculous. And it is ridiculous. So, by solving the scalability issue, you can see that EOS introduced a very radical way of sacrificing a ton of decentralization here, right? And this is where we think that although, we think it's a really smart way of solving this issue by, doing a very simple and kind of like a brutal way of solving this, but you're sacrificing too much, right? If you're giving all the decentralization or all this stuff away, essentially you're also giving security away, because if you only have 21 supernodes, there could be easily like DDoS attack towards your supernodes and whatever. So if you're giving these things away, there's no point of having a blockchain project, right? Why don't we just use Amazon? Like AWS works just fine, So basically, what we're trying to do here at IOST is very straightforward. We're trying to get the same type of performance like EOS as fast as that, and in the meantime, not sacrifice that much on the decentralization part. As I talked about previously, that there's a triangle. So there's data consistency, there's decentralization, there's scalability. You're gonna have to sacrifice something. There's no free meal. I'm not lying here. I'm not telling you the perfect story like a lot of other founders be like, hey, we're just perfect, man. We're just so great. Not like that. Not like that. Everyone has to sacrifice something, right? Like a lot of you guys have heard of fancy terms like sharding or DAG, right? A lot of people are bragging about, hey, we support thousands of transactions per second, but they don't tell you that sharding or doing things in parallel or DAG, right? They're introducing a giant security issue if you want to handle complicated smart contracts. They don't tell you that, right? So there are always conflicts. Like for us, it's straightforward. We always want to sacrifice less and we want to achieve more. So we can briefly talk about our consensus protocol here, which is really the core technology we have. It's called proof of believability here. By the literal meaning, it's very straightforward. Believability means we introduce reputation on top of the traditional POS system. So POS means proof of stake. A lot of people know that, and a lot of people actually know the downside of it. It's really straightforward. In one sentence, rich people gets more powerful, and powerful people gets richer, right? So it's really messed up. It's like you're rich just because you have $100 more than me, you get to be more powerful. Then 2 days later, you have like $1 million. I'm still sitting here with like zero. So this is really bad. For us, this is how POB system works. Not only you have to be rich, but also you have to be reputable. You can't really be some infamous rich kid just driving your Lambo, be like, hey, I'm more powerful than you. It doesn't work like that, right? So you actually have to be doing good things to the community. You're gonna be active. You have to be working transactions. Doing good things. Be a nice witness when other people reach consensus, and then you will gain reputation by doing good things to the ecosystem. Then you will be able to get a chance to be selected to broadcast broadcast the block to actually get rewarded. So in short, we have a second layer of token called Servi, SERVI, which represent your reputation, right? Obviously, in the decentralized system, we can't really be like, we have a centralized server, recording your points. You've got 5 points, man. It doesn't work like that. So we issue you a second layer of token called Servi. Servi has 3 features. Number 1, it's not tradable. You can't be like, hey, I'm a really bad guy here. I just murdered someone, but hey, let's buy some reputation on Binance. Sorry, you can't do that. It's not tradable. Okay, not tradable anywhere, not on exchange, not on OTC, not over the counter. You can't buy it from your friends. Number 2 is self-generated. So if it's not tradable, where does it come from? It's not like we have a bunch of survey, we're selling this to you. It's self-generated by doing good things. If you're doing good things to the community, you get survey. Number 3, that's the most brilliant part, is self-destructive. This is the biggest difference we have with POS here. Like one of the centralization problem POS introduced is that the more money you have, the more you have on stake, the more powerful you become, right? Here, because you have to get reputation, and the reputation actually gets emptied after you get rewarded for a few times. Say you've been selected to broadcast a block twice already. You have to start over. It's not like you did one good thing 20 years ago, then you become like the best guy on earth. It doesn't work like that. You have to be constantly doing good things, right? So you can't do that in POS because you can't be like, hey man, I think you're kind of getting powerful here. Let's grab all your money. It doesn't work like that because stake is their money. You can't be like, I'm grabbing all your Ethereum. But for us, because the Servi token here is not tradable, we can actually empty that, right? And you have to start over. So by doing this, we are eliminating, or we're basically trying to make the centralization problem a lot better for the vanilla POS system. So how does POB make the system faster, right? We're talking about scalability here. We only talk about decentralization part. How can we make it faster? It's straightforward, right? Like we actually have 100 people or 1 million people here. It's not like everyone's got a reputation, right? You can always select a smaller group, like say the top 5%, top 10% of people to reach consensus, right? As long as those people think this is fine because they have reputation, they have stake, we consider this done, right? And the rest of the group, you can always be the witness to verify the transaction, to verify the information asynchronously. So you don't slow the transaction down. And by doing that, you also gain your own reputation, right? So by monitoring other guys, you get reputation, and in the future, you will be able to get into that smaller group and reach consensus over there. So it's always rotating here. Obviously, this is not going to be as decentralized as the Ethereum network right now because they have all the 30,000 nodes equally doing the same thing, right? So that's the most decentralized way. But this is not, this is obviously way better than having 21 super nodes. And in the meantime, we can achieve similar performance. So it's always about balancing here. It's always about what you want to give away, and in exchange of the things you're giving away, what you're bringing to the table, right? So we want to bring more stuff to the table and give less stuff away.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting because with proof of believability, people have to stay involved in the community in order to actually participate. Yeah, that's really great. So I guess also in terms of talking with Ethereum, comparing with Ethereum, you've mentioned sharding. How does your sharding compare with what Ethereum is doing?
So as a clarifier here, sharding is only one of our directions that we're looking at. We also have a team that are looking at DAG and stuff. We can compare that. Before I say that, though, I want most people to know that the biggest problem for sharding right now, you will see a lot of projects that they don't really have anything but sharding. They're going to get in trouble. For one reason, there's no secure way to support some complicated smart contract. And this is not an issue that can be resolved this year or next year. You can mark my word for it, but I'm telling you that it's not going to be resolved anytime soon. This is actually like sharding, for example, or DAG, whatever. They're all doing kind of similar things by doing things in parallel. Like we used to have the 100 kids doing things, and we're only handling one question per time, right? That's not. I mean, by doing sharding, we're not doing this anymore. We're basically divide people into 10 groups. Now, without doing anything else, we're 10 times faster, right? Because we can do things in parallel. It sounds great, but in reality, in the blockchain world, it doesn't work like that because you're going to have to support smart contract. When you actually do things in parallel, the information is not synced on time. It's more like I think A equals to 5, and Tommy and the other shard think A equals to 7. So, we're kind of having a problem here. So the only solution for DAG or all this stuff to support smart contracts is actually add a second layer, which also fucks up with the scalability part again. So there's really some serious, security issue and the scalability issue, and also some other complicated stuff. So mark my word, all this fancy, projects that are saying or kind of lying about their things, saying they're gonna support, millions or tens of thousands of transactions by doing sharding or DAG, and they have full support of smart contract, and they can have the project launched within a few years. Don't believe in them, okay? But yeah, back to what we're doing here. So sharding is one of our things that we're exploring because although we do think it's going to take a long time, we can, first of all, we can still launch the project just with POB alone by the end of this year. It's going to be a lot faster, as fast as US, and also way more decentralized. In the meantime, say 3 years later, the industry made a breakthrough on the sharding support for a smart contract or stuff like that, right? The POB works seamlessly with sharding, right? In each shard means each group, we can also run independent POB. So once the industry has figured out how to make sharding works, we can still be the fastest one. So that'll be nice, right? But back to the sharding itself, let me tell you guys what sharding means and how we're doing sharding here, why we think potentially, in a few years after we launch the mainnet, maybe for the next version of the mainnet, this can be something meaningful. So ideally, sharding means, it sounds fancy, but it's really that's one simple thing. It's dividing people into groups, right? So I'll give you the same example here. You have the 100 kids in the classroom. You're dividing them into different groups, right? So a few things you're going to pay attention here. Number one, you're going to be dividing them into groups randomly enough, right? Because if fewer people are reaching consensus, you don't want other people to predict who they are. They're being, I mean, if they know you and me are always going to in the same smaller group, they can bribe fewer people, right? Like in the past, they had to talk to, say, 33 or 51 people to actually make the whole group corrupted. Right now, they talk to 3 or 5 or 6, right? So you don't want to do that. So first of all, when you divide them into groups, there has to be some randomization algorithm to make sure it's secure enough. And we're doing something here. Second of all, you actually have to rotate all the time, because no matter how securely you divide them in the first time, I will see that, hey, now I know these 10 guys are in the same group. If you don't swap them, I'll be able to figure it out, within a few minutes, right? So this is a basic thing what we're doing here, that instead of, assemble people and reassemble people all the time, which also takes time, because imagine that you're dividing 100 people into 10 groups. It's not like you can do this within a second. You actually have to do this as a process, right? And this as well may take time. So instead of, actually putting out this 100 kids back to the classroom again and divide them again and again and again, what we do have here is a dynamic atomic swap system where, you are in group 1 for this transaction, for example, right? Few seconds later, you're in group 2. So you never know where you're at. And in this way, we're secure enough, randomly enough, and we're efficient enough, right? You don't have to put other people back to the classroom and do this, 10 groups thing again. It's more like you do this once in a while, then you're swapping people. So there are a few other things we're doing for sharding, but as I said, I do think that this is going to be something that's more like for the 3.0 or 4.0 or, years later. For the first version we're going to launch, it's going to be POB based, and it's going to be good enough. And this is, as we are talking right now, I think the most realistic solution that we have right now. Like, there are a lot of fancy things that are going on right now. People are saying they're going to build a decentralized internet. No, they're not. They're not in the next 10 years. Okay, just like there's too much bullshit right now. I really want our audience to understand that what's realistic. That's actually one thing I do like about US. Although they're sacrificing too much, they are doing something that's realistic and actually can be launched. If you look past for the last 10 years, including Bitcoin, right? The only successful project that actually get to be launched, they have two things that share in common. One is called simplicity. It's simple enough. Number two, they're all robust, right? So they're robust and they're simple. A lot of people have this fancy concept that are provably secure on their white paper. Sorry, it is not secure in real world. And they know that. Okay? If sharding is that simple, how come Ethereum hasn't launched sharding already? Vitalik's been talking about it since 2015, for God's sake, right? So think about it, right? Like, think about it. If you think Vitalik's a genius, Ethereum guys are smart, how come the smartest guy haven't been able to solve it for the past 2 years? And in fact, very little progress has been made. If you monitor the GitHub, very, very little progress has been made towards sharding on Ethereum, right? So if you look at another project saying they're going to have sharding launch this year, no.
Yeah, I really like how realistic and pragmatic you are there, definitely. So you mentioned the team earlier. Talk about the team on IOST. I know it's a bunch of people you've been working with for quite a while in previous business.
Yeah, so team actually is one of the things that we're very proud of right now at IOST. I hate to brag about ourselves, but team, we definitely do have one of the best teams in the industry right now. Give you guys a brief example here that we have 35 people on the team right now. For engineers, excluding the co-founders, we have 15 engineers. We have 2 PhDs from Cornell, 2 from Princeton, all very experienced with blockchain stuff. And the other 11 people on here, we're also expanding, by the way. They were all national Olympic winners or international Olympic winners for computer science stuff like NOI, IOI, ACM. Those are the gold medalists. Those are the kids who got into Harvard, MIT, or Stanford at 16 years old. So I'm a CS major, but compared to them, I'm not really a CS major anymore. But yeah, those are the people we have right now. And I do think that with all the smart people together doing realistic things, we can actually, do something meaningful here. So we're pretty excited. And besides those 50 engineers we have here and all the co-founders we have here, and we do have the rest of the team, and we're still expanding. Those are the community PR, and those are the people who are in charge of building a dev community, and in general a community for us, also PR as well. We have office right now in Korea, office in San Francisco, office in Tokyo, in Beijing, and we're also opening offices in India, Russia, potentially Dubai, and oh, by the way, we're also opening one in Germany already this month. So we're definitely going globally, like consensus, doing for Ethereum. That we do think, because we're building infrastructure here, right? Essentially, we're counting on other people to build, the apps or build their stuff on top of IOST. So marketing here, not about price or other stuff, but just in general marketing here, letting people know that why our technology is superior, why we're promising project here to attract more developers is essentially very important for us, and we're taking it very seriously.
Yeah, that's definitely sounds like what I call a team of heavy hitters.
Yeah, because you actually don't see many projects like us that are doing things globally. We're not working with PR agents like that. We are recruiting full-time team members. They're actually sitting in the office in Seoul right now, working on the PR staff and the marketing staff and community staff. So we're taking this very seriously, just like we take technology seriously too.
Sounds like it. So it seems like in general right now, we've been talking about a lot of other projects, and it seems like right now it's like a rush to testnet and a rush to mainnet and
Yeah,
things
yeah.
like that. Can you talk about IOST with that, and then potentially also the ecosystem going on?
Yeah, totally. So progress first, we're gonna have our testnet. We actually have a private testnet already launched back in March, and the public testnet will be launched in about a month and a half. So by the end of June, which is our roadmap as well, you're gonna see our public testnet. You'll be able to play with it, test the performance, see what's going on. So that's quite exciting. And after testnet, we're also gonna launch some online courses, with some popular educational website. We actually have the founders from Code Academy, General Assembly, and Skillshares on board as our advisors. Those are the biggest ed tech websites on earth right now. They're teaching people how to program. And hopefully one day we're going to have IOST courses there to teach developer how to code on IOST. And the mainnet is coming at the end of this year or beginning of next year. Latest should be by Q1 2019, which is actually 6 months ahead of our original schedule. The reason that we're not launching something next month is, again, we're going to do something meaningful, right? There are a lot of projects that are copying the Supernodes thing right now, right? They're basically mimicking the code from EOS or BTS and are launching their mainnet, within a few months. I really, really, really don't like that. I don't think we're here to just make the hype, just to launch some shit show, do something that's indifferent than EOS or Ethereum or whatever. We want to do something meaningful. And unfortunately, meaningful things has to wait. I'm not asking guys to wait like 10 years, like some other moonshot projects. But I think 6 months to 9 months is a very reasonable time period for a reasonable wait, right? So yeah, that's what we're doing here. As for the ecosystem, I cannot emphasize how important that is. We do want to be super developer friendly. We do want to have a robust ecosystem. Besides the online course we're going to do, there are a few things we're doing here. Number one is in May, actually in a few weeks, we're announcing a decentralized application team. We're actually incubating that team. The team has 30 people already. That's going to be build the apps on top of IOST. Obviously, we haven't launched our mainnet yet, so they're going to use our testnet and using Ethereum's network. And once we have the mainnet launched by the end of this year, they're going to migrate everything. But this team will be specifically focusing on building things on top of IOST, not only wallets and things like that, but also like the apps that can be used by normal customers, right? If you look at internet here, it's not like my mom understands what TCP/IP means or what HTTPS means, but she still uses Google, right? She doesn't need to understand that stuff. It's the same thing here. Ideally, we would want to roll out some product that actually normal customers can use. The only thing they need to know is the product they're using is transparent, is secure, is safe, is fair, right? Like that's the blockchain. I mean, that's the benefit blockchain brought them. They don't need to understand like what does this mean, like how the block get broadcasted, all this complicated stuff. So those are the applications we're gonna announce. We're still under a stealth mode right now, but we're gonna make announcements with top tier VCs like Sequoia Capital and things like that in about a month. Ideally, actually in May. So you're gonna see more details soon. That's for the app team. And in the meantime, we're also organizing the consensus, just the consensus for IOST. Just like, there's a consensus for Ethereum. We're also doing the same thing for IOST, just to, make the ecosystem larger, to partner with more, protocol projects that can potentially be built on top of IOST in the future. just to make the ecosystem stronger. We're essentially building in Windows here. We don't want to ship the computer out or the operating system out with no software. Windows ship their product with Microsoft Office, and then with IE, with a browser, with all this complicated stuff, and with some games too. We want to do the same thing, right? You can't really count on the community to build everything for you at first. You're gonna have to build some awesome stuff first. Then we can be, hey, as you can see, those successful stuff are building on top of IOST already. So it's easier for those people to accept a new platform.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a lot of stuff upcoming for.
Yeah.
I mean, to keep you guys busy, and then for everyone else to keep an eye out for.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's great. A couple other questions I had for you. Now, these are less about IOST, but stuff that I think that potentially the viewers will find beneficial.
Go ahead.
Yeah, now, just from the looks of things, I'm going to assume you're a relatively young guy.
Yeah.
And you've been very successful in such a young age. So what do you attribute to your success?
So here's the thing. When I was a kid, when I was 6 years old, I've been programming since then. Although I'm not that type of genius who got in MIT at 16, I've got a lot of other stuff like business or whatever. But I do think that the only thing that's driving me is to do something meaningful. Like I always want to do something meaningful. I want to overturn the traditional industries. I want to do cool things. I want to do meaningful things that can actually affect how people live their lives. Material stuff like money or whatever is never something that's particularly interesting to me. I personally don't have too much burn. Just iOS t-shirt doesn't cost that much money. So, but yeah, I kind of always want to be this guy that can do something meaningful and can actually affect how people live their lives. And this has been my internal drive, and will keep being my internal drive for a long time, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really awesome, because it takes a lot of people to make a lot of money and do a lot of things before they actually end up realizing that. But you've gotten it pretty young. The other question is, so at least the way that I see it, we're still pretty early on in terms of blockchain, and it seems like there's a huge demand for blockchain developers and for talent, and yet there's not that many people out there that can do it. So for anyone who may hate their job or think that they need to make a change or that want to get involved, what would you recommend for them to do in order to get involved?
Yeah. So when we actually talk about recruiting here, our talents here, that's actually the number one problem a lot of projects are facing right now. Luckily for us, we have some PhDs and some NOI or some Olympic winners from our co-founding team. So easier for us to find their friends and classmates or whatever to recruit. But in general, it really depends. If you are a computer science major or major in distributed system, you can actually work for basically a platform or an infrastructure project like us. But in general, it does require a relatively high technical understanding on a lot of stuff. It doesn't mean you have to have a lot of years working on blockchain. Nobody really has that. It's not like anyone has experience working on blockchain for 10 years. That's probably Satoshi Nakamoto himself. But normal people, they only had experience for honestly a few months or a year or so. That's fine. If you had experience in distributed system, you're fine, right? You can pick up relatively fast. But for the rest of the people, like for the normal people like us, few things you can do. Number one is that if you're building, imagine this, if you're building TCP/IP, if you're building the foundation of internet, that's obviously way harder than building Facebook, right? Like Facebook by its technical meaning isn't really any complicated project, right? Like a lot of the college kids can build up something like Facebook when they were in college. It's not like Zuckerberg is this computer science genius who built Facebook. He's a computer science major guy who likes to code, and also in the meantime, he has a business sense and also a lot of other factors. So for blockchain, it's the same thing right now. If you have found a niche or found anything that can be built on top of blockchain, it could be an easy application or anything like that. Theoretically, you don't have to be that technical, right? Some basic sense of how to work on smart contract or how to write some code like building a website, things like that could work, right? So I think for people who are thinking of getting into the industry without having a very heavy resume or background on computer science, you can look into this direction by building some consumer-based apps or by building some games or decentralized apps. I think in a way, those actually can be more promising or profit-driven compared to a project, because in theory, we're a not-for-profit organization here, and we're not supposed to make that much money from that. obviously, if you see how much money Vitalik has made compared to Zuckerberg, it's not really comparable. So a lot of opportunities there. I think it's a very still a very early stage industry. I'm actually super excited to see what's going to be like in the next few years.
Yeah, thanks very much. I mean, your insights are definitely very well appreciated.
Thank you.
So I think I've covered most of the stuff I have here. Anything else you'd like to cover in this interview to talk about?
I think I've talked quite enough. It's a
Yeah,
long.
I do love this interview with you because I pretty much don't have to say anything and you just do the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked enough about IOST. There are a few things I do want to say though is that I've been to all these events these days in New York City, in San Francisco, in Singapore. A lot of people there's still this huge hype about blockchain. Even the Bitcoin price has dipped like more than 60% compared to last year. There's still this huge hype. I do think that most people don't really understand the technology still, which is fine, which is honestly not sad at all because you can't really expect non-technical people to understand everything. It's really unfair to say that. Um, but we do want to see like more people start to actually care about technology and care about realistic stuff more than what they used to care about, more like price or whatever, things like that. Uh, like essentially, like there are still a lot of bullshit going on in the industry, and although we do want to help legitimize the space, there's limited things we can do as one project. So it's more like the community, right? Like I want guys to actually understand that there are like what are the fancy technology cannot be done within 5 years. What are the scams and what are the legit projects? It's also easier for investors to figure out what are the projects to invest. So I think when you guys have more free time, you don't have to look into the fancy white papers. They're honestly useless when it comes to like a normal person. Like you don't understand what they mean, and they only talk about the upside. I've seen like even the Ethereum sharding FAQ. It looks like a very long list, looks like very promising stuff. But what essentially that is like they're basically answering 50 questions out of the 500 unanswered questions, right? Like if I tell you I have an amazing project here, I only tell you the 50 questions I can answer and ignore the other 450. So essentially here, I do think that you guys can look at some, common tech blocks just to understand the basic technology here. It's really not that complicated. I think it takes a normal person a few days to understand what's going on, and then you'll be able to call bullshit, I think, very accurately. I think that's actually a very useful skill for a normal investor here. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, great. Thanks so much for joining us. Those are some awesome information, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be here, and hopefully I get to talk to you guys soon again. We're gonna have our testnet launch in about a month and a half, and we'll see how it goes. Okay.
All right, perfect. We'll look forward to it.
All right. Thanks, man. Cheers, man.